I don't get to talk about colors like this too much. Normally people request neutrals or grays or beiges, but we have a beautiful airy blue to talk about today. It's called Atmospheric by Sherwin-Williams. I'm James, the color guy. I love talking about color, especially in the context of painting and decorating, and that's what Color Quickie is all about. I'm gonna tell you all about this color, give you a color palette based around it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's get into it. So Atmospheric is a color that brings me a lot of joy. It is a sky blue, which is interesting because normally when blues are used in interior design, there tends to be a feeling of soothing and maybe a color to wind down with. Because of how airy and bright this color feels, it can have the opposite effect where it's energizing and invigorating. There is a touch of green in here, but pretty much this is a through and through sort of pale sky blue, perhaps a faded denim feel to it as well, but I find this color to be beautiful when used in the right circumstances. It's not one that I would recommend for a lot of people to use as their main color in their hallways and foyers, but in the secondary parts of your home, like bedrooms, bathrooms, even the kitchen could be a great spot for it. There's a lot of neat little pockets that you can inject this color into your palette in really, really awesome ways. Now, this color was recommended by one of our patrons over on Patreon. If you haven't checked that out yet, that is the place where you can really support what we do. And also you can get other perks like priority when picking colors for these videos. So yeah, not required, but totally appreciated. By becoming a Patreon member, it is one of the surefire ways to ensure that we can keep doing this kind of content for the long haul. And that's the goal. Now, why don't we get into the color palette that I built around this color? Because that's where I think this whole thing comes alive. To start with, let's talk about the trim options. So we have two, and we have a light and a dark choice. Typically speaking, more people are going to opt for an off-white or a white on your baseboards and your doors and your frames. So that's why I want to start with Gypsum, which is not a very popular off-white. It is part of the Emerald Designer Edition color palette. So it is one that is going to be limited to that emerald paint, that sort of higher tier quality product. But it is a beautiful color that just feels soft and subtle. It has an 82 LRV, which means it's not overly bright, just feels right, feels nice. It's not as vibrant as high reflective white or something like that, but in this color palette, it just sits in the background, but still feels nice and crisp and clean. Just enough gray to make it feel a little more minimal and casual, but not too much where it doesn't look white anymore. Now for our dark trim color, this is sort of a thematic choice where Atmospheric is this beautiful blue sky. Maybe there was some thunderstorms happening, all these cumulonimbus clouds came in and then rained, and then you're left with this beautiful color after the storm. What a segue that was. But essentially, this is one of the darkest navy blues I have ever seen. It has a 3 LRV, which means it reflects only 3% of the light that hits it. That's really, really dark. Essentially, it's as dark as some black paint colors, but what you have here is a lovely amount of rich blue happening, which is great. So this is an awesome color if you wanted some dark, dark trim, but didn't want to go with a black or taupe or something like that. It's still within that family of blues that Atmospheric comes from, but obviously taken to a really, really deep, dark level. You can also use this as a really dark accent color as well, off of the trim on things like walls. So maybe an accent wall or an accent ceiling, or even paint your powder room with it. Why not? We're seeing more people go for darker colors, so this could sort of fit in that mold, but I picked it for a dark trim choice. Now, what about wall color pairings? I want to start with Polar Bear, which is a great name for a color, right? Polar Bear sort of reminds me of cold weather, and blue is a cooler color, but Polar Bear is a warmer leaning kind of beigey neutral that has just a touch of gray in it to sort of put it in this grayish category. There is enough gray where sometimes you can see a little bit of a greeniness coming through, but it is subtle. Essentially, it's giving you a warmer alternative to Atmospheric. It's a little warmer than maybe you would expect to go, which is purposeful because I wanted this color to sort of be the main color in this palette, and then Atmospheric ends up being a little pop of beautiful blue, which will really come through. That warm and cool interaction will be pretty strong. And then if you know me, you know I love me some green, and Bonsai Tint will be my second color pairing. This is a transitional color because green has that quality to it, where technically it is on the cooler side of the color spectrum, but it has yellow, which gives it its warmth as well. So it is sort of in the middle. The LRV on this one is around 60, so that is a great spot to be. It's pretty flexible and versatile as long as you like the color, of course. And it has this minty pistachio sort of color that I really, really enjoy. And because it's comprised of blue and yellow, it's going to be able to coexist with the other colors that we've talked about, whether it's atmospheric or polar bear or even the trim color options. There is that transitional nature that helps connect the dots within this color palette, and it's all because of good old Bonsai Tint. The third color pairing ends up being the accent color, technically.
I can play the piano, and I'm a fancy British man.
Mainly because of how dark it is, not because of how vibrant it is. It's called Prelude, and this is a very dark neutral. You could describe it as a deep dark taupe, combining charcoal gray and deep espresso brown. And because of that, even though it is the most dramatic color of this palette so far, it's not necessarily going to pop as much as something like that last green color would. So just keep that in mind. Even though it is dark, it doesn't have to be the accent color. You can use this in more subtle ways where it's just sort of tucked away as an accent wall. What's great about this color is it can be replaced with After the Storm, that dark blue we talked about. Both of these choices can be great on trim or on walls, depending on what you wanted to do. If you wanted to double down with the blue, or you wanted something a little more earthy and organic and neutral, you got a lot of options here. So here's the palette all together. Please let me know what you think. And of course, another video, why not? Right here.